Hey, what's going on everyone? So today we're going to be installing and putting together a 12 by 16 hardtop gazebo made by Fung Yard. Now this is the second gazebo that I've put together, so make sure you stick around to see some tips, some tricks, especially if you're planning on building one, and it would definitely save you some time putting yours together. Now this is going to be installed right here in my garden area here. I'm gonna have to remove this section of fence and move it out around the gazebo. But the main reason why I wanted this gazebo, well, actually my wife wanted it more than I did, but she wanted an area in her garden here where she can come over, relax, get out of the sun, get out of the rain. If she was up here at the garden when she's planting, and she could just come up here, hang out, watch the butterflies or whatever else she wants to do. But for years now, she's wanted me to put a roof on that old swing set up there. She wanted me to frame some kind of metal roof on there, and that's what I was gonna do initially, but it was actually gonna be a kind of a pain in the butt and wasn't gonna look very nice. So when Fung Yard reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to test out and review one of their gazebos, I asked her about it and she was like, absolutely, I would definitely rather have another gazebo instead of having something fabricated up on top of that old swing set. Because for over a year now, we've been using this hardtop gazebo on my patio, and it's been excellent for rainy days, shade on hot days, and just been excellent overall. So I'm really happy to check this one out from Fung Yard and see how it compares. Now, as a disclaimer, Fung Yard did send me this gazebo for testing and review, and if you're interested in one, I'll leave a coupon code down below if I can get any to save you some money. And if you use the affiliate link down below, more than likely I'll receive a commission. But thanks for watching. Hope you learned something out of this video, and if you do or have any questions, please put it down in the comments below and hopefully I can answer them. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Now I'm gonna try to get most of this frame installed today. This is probably gonna be a couple-day process because we're supposed to get some really nasty thunderstorms here later today. I don't want this thing blowing away, and that's gonna be another challenge, is trying to mount that thing to this grassy area here. I do have a couple ways that I'm thinking about doing it, so make sure you stick around to see that or see what I have in mind. But let's get building. Now when you get this gazebo, it will come in 5 boxes. You get 2 for the roof and then 3 other ones ranging from 55 pounds all the way up to 92 pounds, which makes it very easy for 2 people to carry, to take it to wherever you need to, especially in a remote area where you can't get to very easily. So now we're gonna open up box 1 of 5 first and see if we can find the instructions. Just like the last gazebo I put together, didn't know where the instructions were at, which box. So let's see if it's box number 1. All right, so it doesn't look like the instructions are in box 1. It looks like these are the legs and most of the frame. But I can tell you right off the bat, one thing I really like already is this wood grain look. It looks pretty awesome for being able to make metal look like wood like that. Pretty cool. And this is the heavy one. This is the 92-pound one, box number 2. Let's see if that one has the directions. All right, so box number 2, you're gonna have your directions. Oh man, looks like some of the bolts are separate in here, like the package come open, so that's gonna be probably a nightmare trying to figure out what bolts are what, because what you wanna do is, you don't wanna take them all out of the package, you wanna separate them and put them into separate containers, and then label them with which ones they are, so when you're following the directions, they don't get mixed up and you know what they are. But however, they're already mixed up in here, so this might be fun. Okay, so we got all the bolts separated. Wasn't too bad, just the ones that had a bunch of bolts, it was like 200 and some, they were just mixed up with the next size up, so they were pretty easy to separate. Make sure you don't just put the markings on the lid, make sure you put them on the container themselves in case you have some of the same lids that get mixed up, because then you're not going to know which bolts are which. So I would say label the lid and the container, and it would make it a lot easier. Some of the smaller ones we put into bags here, and then these individual ones we just left in the package. What I did notice is they do give you a little package here that is not labeled, and there's bolts and curtain hangers. Basically, this is a spare parts kit in case you're short or you lose a few bolts or nuts. They do give you a little bit of everything extra in a separate package here, so you can just set that aside and then just use that if you're short on a bolt or something. Everything in the manual has a number, and then everything is labeled on the bag or on the part itself. Some of them, only 2 of the 4 are labeled, so I wouldn't open these up until you need them. So just make sure all your bags have markings on them. One of these, the actual label came off and was stuck to another bag, so just make sure everything is labeled before you get started. It'll make it a lot easier. The first step in the manual is to install the feet onto the legs, and then you can start installing the top rails. I'll probably bolt these top rails together first and then install them onto the legs. But one word of advice is do not tighten all the bolts down until you get everything assembled, because when I installed this gazebo, initially I tightened everything up too tight, and then I had to re-loosen it to actually get these to line up correctly. So just leave all the nuts and bolts somewhat loose until you get it mostly together. Once you get the bottom frame together, you can go ahead and tighten up the legs. That's one piece of advice that may save you a lot of time in the end. And one other thing, I don't think this gazebo has balls on the top, but this first one I put up did. And when we get a heavy rainstorm, those balls drip down through. I think water gets underneath them and drips. So if you get one that has those balls, make sure you put some silicone underneath those balls before you install them onto your roof, because if you don't, more than likely they will drip eventually. All right, so I got the bottom feet on the legs, and I'm starting to put together these side rails. Not really following the directions exactly, because it says to put them all on the legs first, I believe, but I'm putting them together first and then I'll install them onto the legs. But these are the brackets you use. They are the P brackets. They are in box number 3. And when you put the short rails together, you just install the 3 screws here on an L, like this, on both, and leave these out. These will be in the center for your rail for your curtain. So when you mount the curtain rails, it will take these 2 holes, and then on the top, one of your roof truss brackets bolt to this. So you want to leave these 4 screws out on the short sides, and then on the long sides, you will actually use the 4 outside holes and just leave the center holes undone for your curtain. And I highly recommend, unless you want to spend a few more hours, getting yourself some kind of impact or drill, and you're going to want an attachment with a 5mm, and I believe it's 4mm for these bolts. It'll go a lot quicker. I'll put a link down below on Amazon to the impact driver that I use, as well as some different attachments there that you might be able to use. But it saves tons of time. Just don't strip them out. You can also use a drill and just turn your clutch down to a lower setting so that you don't strip out your bolts. But it is getting really dark over there, way over there. I don't know if you can see it. And I just heard thunder, so we're gonna start cleaning up a little bit here, cleaning most of this stuff up, and then hopefully get a little bit more of this together today, but we'll see how far we get. All right, the thunderstorm started rolling through. We put everything away real quick, but then we really didn't get anything, and it seems like it cleared up for now, so we're back at it again. I have the short rails and long rails assembled, the long rails that I have in the garage right now, but I'm actually on like step 2 and step 5 at the same time here. We're gonna be installing these little brackets here onto these posts, and you want the angle to be facing in towards the smooth edge. You don't want it to be out here with the rough edge. These get installed here with these M8 screws. And then these rails right here will get screwed onto here. Looks like X9 screws for this. My trusted labeled bin here, X9. Would be helpful to have 2 screw guns for this. And then these go on like this. And then my next step, I'm gonna attach this to this with these X1 bolts here. Now that I got these installed onto the legs, I'm gonna go ahead and install these M8 corner brackets up here, putting the small screw in first, which is a little tough with this drill. And then the bigger screws. You have to put the small ones in first because the bigger screw head would get in the way of putting the small screw in if you put the big one in first. And I used a square to square this corner up to make sure it was square before I tightened all these up. Not sure if you really need to, but I'm somewhat of a perfectionist. All right, so 2 problems. One not very major. This little piece is broke off on J1, I noticed. Broke off the bottom here. Honestly, that's not too big of a deal, but I'm gonna reach out and see if they can send me a new quarter. But this right here is a little bit odd. I was installing these top corner brackets on here. These are the M8 brackets. Went to install this one and the holes are completely wrong on this one here. It's supposed to have the wide hole up here, like this one, and then it's supposed to have a small hole here. You can see that the big hole was drilled right in the corner of the bracket. It's just completely wrong. It should have been like this and not like this, so I don't even know how that happens. I'm gonna have to reach out to them and hopefully they can send me another corner bracket. The good thing is I can put this on after the fact, after it's all together, and I don't think it's gonna cause an issue, and it's gonna be pretty easy to get to. Wish they would have included an extra one of these in the box. All right, so after we got all the main rails assembled down on the patio, me and my wife carried it up, and then it got a little tricky here because we were trying to keep everything stood up while I put these long rails onto the short sides, and one time one of them fell over the post here and it got a little bit twisted up, but was able to put it together, just me and her so far up to this point. And it was also a little bit tricky getting these ones square once I got those long rails on, because there was a pretty big difference here as far as this being level. So I just propped this end up on some block and some brick, and it was a little bit easier to square this post. But I still used my little square, like I said, because I'm sort of a perfectionist and like to be thorough. But everything seems to be square now. Now what we're gonna do is install the tracks for this screen, and these are I's and W's. The I's will go on the short end and the W's will go on the long end in the center of the inside of these beams. And when you install these, there is a plug in one end of these. You want those to go up against the posts here, and then the open end like this will go towards the center so that you can get your curtains on. Now, that is something that I like about these ones, is that it does have a plug, because on my other gazebo, there's no plug on the end here. And sometimes when the screen's folded up, it kind of comes off the track in the center, and then you got to go up and put it back on. It's not that big of a deal, but it is nice that there's plugs on this one. So pretty easy here. You just line the holes up right in the center here and screw them on. Okay, now we're on step 8, and we're installing E1 onto E. It basically lengthens the 4 corner supports like this, and then this bolt hole is what will attach it to the lower frame. This one here had a little nick there in the top. Not sure how that got there. This was bent down a little bit, but just like on the first one I put together, take a little crescent wrench and you can straighten this rail out here if you need to. All right, so now we're gonna jump back to step 7, where you start putting the top roof brackets on, or the roof trusses, whatever you wanna call them. Now, this does not show in here that these need to attach to this piece right here, which is K1. So that might confuse some people in the manual, because it doesn't really show K1 on here. So just know that when you start putting these on, you're gonna need to mount the top of these trusses here to K1. You can see one of these tops are damaged pretty good on this, and then when you turn it over, it has a pretty good crease in underneath. You're not gonna see this because the roof will be covering that. You'll just see this little crease here. Not sure if I'm gonna try to see if they can send me another one of those or not. I'm probably gonna try to just use it so I can get it together. Now, I may do this a little differently than the manual, and I may try to install some of this together and then lift it up and put it on that base that I built earlier up there. Not quite sure how that's gonna work out. I'll let you know after I try it. All right, now, I'm not quite sure this was the best way to do this. We put the short rails on the sides, and then I'm just holding up in the middle while she's attaching the 2 end ones, and then we're going to come back and do the corners. The problem with doing it this way is if I let go of this is going to come down and it's going to push those long rails out. So you really have to hold up on here until you get the corner ones in. So it may be better to do the corner ones first. That's what I did on the last one. Put the corner one onto here, and then the opposite corner one on over there. And basically you get your 4 corners in, and it's not going to push your corners out, because the side rails are going to keep them from pushing out. So keep that in mind. I mean, it's going to work here the way we're doing it, but it may not be the easiest way or the best way. All right, so this is a good way to use your head here. As soon as I get these corners in, shouldn't have any problems after this. All right, there's one. Almost on home stretch here. This is the other opposite corner, and this should keep it from pushing out. So yeah, definitely at least a 2-person job in my opinion. I don't know how you would do this with 1 person. At least 2 people. If you had more than 2, it'd be even easier, and it's starting to rain. How come every time I put one of these up, it rains? It rained last time I put that one up. I was under an umbrella putting it together. Go figure. And this is the last roof brace, or truss, whatever you want to call it. And this is where it'll start to gain a little bit of rigidity. All right, everyone, so today is day 2. It got a little bit dark and started raining more, so I had to wrap it up. I did get these center cross supports on here, and one thing I want to mention that is not in the manual is there's holes in the center. I think these are H5s, but these 2 center holes, there's a threaded part on one side, and it wasn't clear whether or not that threaded part had to be facing up or down. I put it down. I'm not quite sure if that was the right way to do it. And another thing that was a little bit hard to understand in the manual, at least it took me a while to figure out, is the center bolts are not all the same when you attach it to these rails. On the side here, this center bolt actually comes up through, and then the nut goes on, and then when your sheeting goes on, the nut gets tightened down. And then I think there's a few different nuts and bolts that go on the center sheeting down below as well. So just keep that in mind. I actually might try to flip this over when I start installing the sheeting because I don't know if I want this nut facing up. I'd prefer them to all match, not that it really matters much. And I did notice that one of the small roof panels on top here was damaged in the box, and it looks like it was packaged that way, not damaged in shipping, because if you look real closely, you could see that the paint on there was a little bit worn off. But now I'm on this step where you install the outside rails of the top part of the roof on this tiered roof system here. I'm on the G5 piece, and this goes on here like this, and then you have your little corner pieces that go over here, and then your sheeting will slide down into this, and then you install your top cap after you get all your sheeting in here, which is a little bit different than the first gazebo that I installed. The last one I installed had the cap already on, and I installed this around there. Then I had to get the sheeting up in the gap, and to be honest, it was a little bit difficult. So I'm hoping this one might be a little easier doing it this way. G7 piece is going to go on here like this, and then you got these corner caps that go over top of these. Just like that. And just continue it all the way around, and then you'll be ready for your roof sheeting. And again, I think these bolts, I'm gonna probably put them down through this way, but it was really unclear. I didn't know if they were supposed to face up through like the two side ones and then the nuts go on, but I'm gonna probably just screw them down through and then put the nuts on underneath. All right, so I got 3 of the 4 sides done, working on the 4th now. And what I've noticed is these ones go pretty easy, but the short ends were hard to get in there. If you leave the center bolt out over there on this bottom rail, you can pull it down and you can get it to go together a little bit easier. And the way that I'm doing this roof is I'm accounting for wind. So the wind in my area always comes this way. Very rarely will it come that way. So the way I'm overlapping these seams, I'm putting this seam over top of that one. That way when the wind hits it, it's not getting up under any of the seams. Now you might not be able to do that on the whole thing, but I'm at least trying to prevent any wind from ripping anything off, which I don't think I'll have that problem anyway, hopefully. But other than that, it's going together fairly easy so far. And these bolts here, I'm glad I put those nut ends down, and then I'm running the bolts down through and putting the nut underneath. Same as on this one here. They recommend sticking this bolt up through, but I couldn't even get the sheeting on with that bolt sticking up through, so I ran it down through the same way and then put the nut underneath on the bottom. And I've also noted the other gazebo I installed had little plastic clips that you had to clip on all these panels up in here, and they were a pain in the butt. They kept coming off as you were trying to get it up in there. These panels do not have that plastic clip to clip on, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference, but it definitely is easier to install without them. And then one other thing I've noticed is these little plastic pieces that go underneath everywhere you put a bolt, so that you don't put the bolt too tight and pinch the metal down and divot it. On the last gazebo, these were rubber, and on this one, they're plastic. So on the last gazebo, if you would tighten the screw too tight, it would put a dimple in the metal. On this one, it doesn't seem to dimple as easy because these hold it up a little bit better. Put the plastic piece up under there, and I'm just gonna fish this bolt down through here, maybe. Then I'll go ahead and tighten it up. And then I'll put the nut underneath it and tighten it up. And like I said, this was a little different. The other one I put together, you couldn't just screw it down through. You had to put the nut underneath and the bolt down through on top at the same time. And you had to have somebody holding the nut underneath as you were tightening it. I think you might have to do that on some of the bottom ones, but we'll see when I get to that point. Ready for the next panel. All right, so we got the top finished up. That top piece went on really easy. The 2 hooks on the ends that you can hang stuff from, just screw up in and hold it, and then there's 1 bolt in the center. The only thing I didn't care about is the 3 brackets underneath that top plate are just pop riveted on, so not sure if those are gonna leak or not. But now I'm working on this inside track down here on this bottom rail, and this is what I was talking about up top. These bolt hole areas here, the center of these long ones get these as well. And I'm just gonna leave those pointed down, put the screws down through the roof when I put the roof sheeting on, and then I'll put the nuts underneath here. But just work your way around, start from one end, go to the other, and pretty easy assembly here. All right, this is the 3 out of the 4 sides here. These long runs are going really easily, a lot easier than the first one I installed, but it is getting really windy. These panels keep blowing up there until I get that inside rail around that corner. But I'm hoping to be able to finish the main part tonight and get that rail in there. And then we are gonna just tie these corners down for now, just so that this thing don't blow away, because they are calling for some high winds. And I ordered some screw-in stakes for the ground, but I'm not gonna get them until after the 4th of July. So hopefully this thing stays put until then. All right, everyone, so finally got the top all installed. The next step is to install the curtains and the netting around the outside, the screen. But thankfully, Fung Yard also sent me this swing here to show in this video. And actually, it's a really nice swing. It's gonna save me a lot of time figuring out what to put up here. Now, this does have a top that goes on it, which I'll probably put on because you can angle it back, and it will actually help reduce the sun coming through here without having to close those screens. However, in a really windy situation, you might wanna take that off. It comes off with the 2 bolts on the sides. But this thing's pretty cool. It's pretty reasonably priced swing. I think currently, as of me filming this right now, it was on sale on Amazon for like $240 or something. Don't quote me exactly on that, but I'll put the link down below to it. And on their website, it was like $300 and some dollars. So not too bad, pretty comparably priced to some other brands, but went together really easy. Me and my son put it together. It has springs on here to help with bounce. And what's awesome is you can pull these 2 pins out on the sides here, and this thing folds down into a bed, which is pretty neat. So if I can't find my wife, whoop, don't forget to lock it. It'll fold up on you. But if I can't find my wife in the house, I know where she'll probably be. She'll probably be up here sleeping. It's not quite long enough for me, but it is nice to just lay down and relax if you want to. One thing I do recommend though, you can lock it here with these locks, and then when you get on it, it's not gonna swing, and it makes it a lot nicer for you to lay on it. But pretty nice. The cushions are only 2.5 inches thick. I think on their website it shows like a little over 3 inches, so the cushions are a little thinner. They are water resistant. They will shed some water, but I'm not sure about them being 100% waterproof. And it did say that this thing had like a 700 and some pound weight rating. However, on the tag on the unit when I put it together, it said it had a 661 pound weight limit. So a little bit less than what their website states. I did mention it to them, so hopefully they could change it and update that on their website. The only thing that I noticed that I would have liked to have seen a little bit better on this swing is the way that the cushions Velcro onto the base here. So the cushions do Velcro here on the sides here, which keeps them up pretty good. And if you put it above the pin, it keeps it from sliding down. However, nothing really holds the center. They do go together, but it would have been nice to see a Velcro strip along here for these to actually attach to here, because sometimes these want to ride down just a little bit. You can see the center one rides down further because there's nothing holding it up. But other than that though, pretty nice swing for a couple $100 if you're looking for something quick and easy. And it also has some pretty big feet here on the bottom, which is nice. If you're putting on a patio area, they're like a hard plastic. It would prevent from marking up your patio or a wooden deck. But I'll leave the link down below for this as well. But let's get on to installing these curtains. So what you want to do is you want to put your curtain clips on here. On the long runs, you get 7 on each rail. The backside track is going to be for your curtain, and the inside track is going to be for your screen. And then once you get those in there, you put your outside bracket on here to cover this seam. And then this bracket goes here to prevent these clips from coming off the track on the inside. Just like that. All right, everyone, I finally got the assembly done on this gazebo. You can see I put the top back on this swing. It's gonna work out really good. I can angle it down to block some more sun. And you can see the curtains on here are sort of like a whitish / yellowish. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But one thing to keep in mind, if you shut these curtains, if it's a little bit of a windy day, they are gonna fly up on you. So you may wanna stake the middle down somehow. I just threw a stake through the zipper, and I wish they would have included some grommets along the bottom here so you could keep it staked down. However, the other one's the same way. I don't think anybody that manufactures these gazebos does that, but it would be a really nice improvement. You can also shut these curtains here to block out sun if you want. Everything's zippered. You could unzipper them in the middle of each panel. So I think this is gonna be a really nice area now for my wife to come up and relax. One thing to keep in mind is you can see here, I just have it temporarily tied down, but you're gonna wanna permanently mount this down to the ground somehow. I have this set up on blocks right now. What I plan on doing is framing this up with like a 2x10 or something, and then getting this up to the height I need it, because ultimately I would prefer it to slope down this way towards this water tote, because I plan on filling this tote up from the rainwater on the roof of this gazebo. And this gazebo does have built-in gutters, so it prevents water from overflowing off the roof as you walk underneath it, which is really nice. And the water comes out of these holes on the corners. But one thing I want to mention is that I noticed they did not include silicone to silicone these seams where they go together up here. So I just used the silicone that I had left over from the last gazebo I installed, because you will get water leaking down through that seam and it will drip here if you don't seal those joints. But once I pick that up to the height that I need it, I'm gonna have to secure it down. So what I did was I bought these stakes on Amazon here. I'm gonna screw these in the ground, and then I have this wire here, but I'm gonna screw these down on each side of this post once I get them up to height, wrap this cable around here and bolt it down so that it holds that down to the ground. In case it gets windy, it won't blow away, because we've had tornadoes about 10 miles away from here this year at least twice now, which is insane for this area. But I think this is going to be pretty good. It does say it's rated to hold up to blizzards and rain, but it doesn't give you a weight rating or a wind rating, so I have no clue on that. And I also got the top screen in up here. It has 2 zippers, one on each side, that you can unzip if you want to use those hooks to hang things. The only thing I'd be concerned about is the top is still open and birds can probably get in there and build a nest on top of that screen. May not happen, but it's just one thing that could possibly be an issue in the future from that opening there not being blocked off. One thing I did notice is the 2 corner pieces on each long end. There's really nothing holding those in. They're really small. So I'm probably gonna run a self-tapper down through those just to keep those in place so that they don't fly out. But other than that, the gazebo I think is gonna work really well for us. And currently I think it's around $400 to $500 cheaper than the first one I put up. However, the quality is just slightly less. But there is a 6-year warranty on the roof, a 2-year warranty on the curtains and screen, and a 1-year warranty on the frame on this. If you have any questions, please put a comment down below. I'll try to answer any questions you have. Let me know your thoughts on this. If you plan on putting one up, what you decide on, the size you go with, and how you like it. Please consider subscribing if you found this helpful, and don't forget to use the links down below when you purchase to help support the channel if you found this review helpful. Please consider subscribing, and I'll see all of you around on the next one. Thanks for watching.